Hey everybody, Tekking101 here, and welcome to a new episode of Geography is Everything. Cue the new awesome intro! Yeah! Wasn't that freaking... Yeah! I love that intro. Thank you to AMV Chopsticks for sending it to me, for making it for me. Really cool. There's another one I got that was really good as well, so I think I'm going to alternate between the two, just kind of switch back and forth. And it's been a while since the last episode of Geography is Everything! So I just wanted to thank everybody that sent in entries. It wasn't really a contest, but I got a lot of entries for the intro, and, you know, people made a lot of simple ones, a little bit more complicated ones. Most of them were good, and, hey, at least you had fun, right? So thanks for that. But thank you specifically to AMV Chopsticks. Links to his stuff is found below. And the next person that we're going to be getting to, the next episode I do, which I guarantee you will not be much, you know, not as much of a gap there. The next one will be coming out rather shortly in comparison. And then you'll see the new one there. Okay, so for this episode of Geography is Everything, we're going to be spotlighting the Sky Island, Skypiea, which you'd think would be kind of redundant, but it is in fact not, because it's not the only island in the sky, although it does make me wonder, because all the other Sky Islands we know about, like, Weatheria, and, like, Eneru's Homeland, Bricka, and Balloon Terminal, you know, and then we get to Skypiea. It's just like, was Skypiea, like, the first one, or is that, like, the seat of power for the entire sky? Because it doesn't seem to be like the Sky Islands are united under one force. It kind of just seems like there's, like, left to their own devices. Like, you know, Eneru ruled over Upper Yard, which is part of Skypiea. Skypiea is just like a general term for Angel Island and Upper Yard kind of together. And so he ruled over that, and Gonfall ruled over it before him, and I guess currently as well. But when it comes to other Sky Islands that are, like, in the New World, maybe they never even heard of Eneru. Who knows? They have their own governments and stuff like that. It's just a little, it's just like, were they the first? Because they just named them Skypiea. So that would be like if you had an island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, you just called it Oceantopia. I'd be like, alright, well, yeah, it is an island on the ocean. It's just, you were maybe a little bit uncreative there. Okay, so the Straw Hats, upon journeying on the Grand Line, came into a little bit of a road bump after Alabasta. Well, actually two. The first road bump was there was a giant galleon about to crash down on the Going Merry, so they had to, like, avoid that. But then the second road bump was they took a look at the log pose, and it was pointing straight up. And I'm kind of happy Oda did this, because once the Straw Hats got in the Grand Line, it's just like one little slither of the planet right around the equator. Then they just have to travel around the Earth that way. So maybe Oda thought, let's throw a little bit of a wrench in it and add like a new dimension to their travels, where they are still technically going straight, but not on just like a lateral plane. They gotta go up and back down and eventually even further down to like Fishman Island. So just to keep it interesting and show various like climates and stuff. In fact, that's probably the reason that Oda made the Grand Line weather so wonky, because he wanted to draw islands that are like, well, I want to draw winter islands sometimes, and other islands that are deserts, and some islands that are in the clouds. So it's just all, you know, a device of Oda's imagination. I just really hope that the Straw Hats go back to at least one more Sky Island in the New World before the end of the series, because it was a cool concept, and they went to Skypiea, and after that, we didn't really get much more of Sky Islands after that. I mean, yeah, Nami got sent to Weatheria, but, you know, the crew wasn't with her, and we didn't really get to see that much of Weatheria. It was, you know, just the place she hung out for 2 years with a bunch of old wizards. That must have been extraordinarily awkward. There were no women on that island except for her. That must have been extraordinarily awkward. But anyway, which makes me question, how did she get that bikini? Did the old dudes buy it for her? Okay, I'm asking myself questions I never even want to go to. I'm sure there's a Daochishi somewhere of Nami's exploits on Weatheria, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about Skypiea. Alright, so first off, let's talk about the exact methodology you have to take in order to get up to the sky. That's probably the first one, right? Like, how exactly do you get all the way up to a sea in the clouds? And I guess the first question we should be asking as a prerequisite to that is, how there can even be a sea in the clouds? Well, it's manga, there's your reason, but also more scientifically, and once again, I don't even think Oda had to really explain this. I mean, it's manga, it's fiction. You want to say there's an ocean in the clouds? Fine, okay, I'll roll with it, it's cool. But no, he came with an explanation for this. He stated that there is a certain substance that occurs whenever the ocean evaporates, like the water cycle process. Because sea prism stone exists, that introduces a type of chemical into the ocean. And when that evaporates, it turns into something called pyrobrine. And the pyrobrine kind of condenses into, like, a malleable, semi-solid, like, cloud. Like, it has the consistency of water. And so, when they're up in the sky, yeah, clouds are already made of water, but it adds, like, enough layer to it where you can actually, like, swim in it, and you can actually sail a ship on it in the sky. So that's really the scientific method on how this exists. And there's two different types of clouds. There's island clouds, and then there's sea clouds. Sea clouds are basically just the clouds that you sail around on, and then the island clouds are the things that condense to the point where you can actually build structures on them. And the people of the sky even develop their own, like, factories where they take huge chunks of clouds and they can cut them with, like, knives and make furniture and stuff and, like, tables out of them and beds. You ever want to sleep on a cloud? Well, in the world of One Piece, in the Sky Islands, you can actually do that. And I'm kind of disappointed I'll never get a luxury to sleep on an actual cloud. Right, so that explains how people can live and sail around in the sky. They're living on a layer of sea cloud. And in fact, there are two different layers of sea cloud. The first one is 7,000 meters, or roughly 22,000 feet above sea level, and that's referred to as the White Sea. Then, 3,000 meters above that, sitting at 10,000 meters above sea level, or roughly 32,000 feet, you have the White Sea. Get it? Because I guess that shade of cloud on the White Sea is slightly less white than the shade of white on the White Sea. Right? White? I don't know. Anyway, the point is, it's an easy way to remember. You know, the lower layer is the White Sea, the upper layer is the White Sea, and the Skypiea is located on the White Sea. Now, whenever the Straw Hats arrived on the first layer, they didn't really see much of anything. It was pretty much just ocean. The only thing around them was Heaven's Gate, which eventually led up to the White Sea. Now, that doesn't mean there's nothing in that layer. It just means the place that the Straw Hats arrived had nothing around it. If they would have kept sailing around in the White Sea, they would have probably stumbled upon an island or two, as Gonfall said. And in fact, Weatheria is an island that's located in the White Sea. So yeah, there's definitely still islands there, and then just higher up, there's just, you know, more islands. It's just probably just the way that it evaporates, that pyrobrine stuff, it just developed and cohered in two distinctive layers of sea cloud, and that's just how they make a living. And the Sky people figured out ways to, you know, go in between both layers, so it's not really that big of a deal for them. Also, I just remembered, like, if the Straw Hats were going to go back to the sky at some point, they would probably have to rely on some other method to get up there than what they did the first time with the knock-up stream. Then again, they have Frankie with them now, so it's possible he might be able to create an invention to just, like, make the Sunny fly. I don't think it would be beyond his capabilities to do that kind of stuff now. Maybe even just take, like, the Kude Burst, like the exhaust port for that's on the stern of the ship, and figure out a way to attach that to the bottom of the ship, and then so it just rockets off, like, straight vertical. Maybe that's how they could get back up there. Just an idea. But anyway, yeah, there's a few ways to get up to the White Sea and then eventually the White Sea. In fact, there's only two that we know of that are commonplace, and the third method is basically do it yourself. So really quick, there's the knock-up stream, and then there's the Summit of High West, and then the do-it-yourself method. And let me just explain what I mean by that. The do-it-yourself method is you have some sort of devil fruit ability that allows you to get up that high, like Shiki's float fruit, or Kuma's ability to, like, his paw fruit that can fling people anywhere in the world. Not a conventional means that just anybody can do, but if you have, you know, if you're strong enough, if you have the right ability, you can eventually get to the sky. In fact, I asked this question on Twitter a few weeks ago, like, Sanji knowing Skywalk, could he eventually get to the sky, the Sky Island, just by, like, jumping? Because there doesn't seem to be a limit, based on just your stamina, and we know Sanji has loads of stamina, so if you're strong enough, couldn't you just keep hopping using Skywalk or Geppo and eventually get to the sky? And the consensus I heard back from that is that it's only possible if, like, it doesn't really matter how much air there is, because the higher up you get, the less dense oxygen becomes, so maybe you couldn't use Skywalk after a certain point, like, it wouldn't work anymore, because I think they explain the way Skywalk works is you're taking the air and, like, compressing it to, like, jump higher, but if you get to a lower point of air, like, the atmosphere is, you know, less dense, you're maybe not going to be able to use Skywalk as much. Maybe that would be a good way of explaining why people can't just, like, skip to the top top, you know? But the first two methods are the main ones, and the only one that we've really seen explored at all is the knock-up stream, alright? So this is a current that's hanging around Jaya Island, and keep in mind, just bookmark Jaya for a second, because we're going to get back to it, alright? So the deal with this is that this is something I didn't really understand, so maybe you can fill in a few gaps with this. Like, I understood the basic concept of what Oda was going for here. I just have a few questions about it, alright? So the way that Cricket explained this is that there's large caverns under the ocean, right around the shore of Jaya. And these caverns can build up with, like, gas. And then eventually that gas explodes and creates just this huge plume of water. A current called the knock-up stream that gets shot right into the sky. And usually if your ship is anywhere around these currents, your ship just gets destroyed and just gets flung miles away. Unless you're right at the center of it when it happens and your ship is decked out with the appropriate, like, reinforcements and flight gear like the Mary was. If you're right at the right point when it shoots up, then you can actually ride the current all the way into the White Sea. Alright, now, the way I'm explaining this, it's a very dangerous method if you haven't figured it out. Gonfall stated it's like an all-for-nothing kind of thing. Either everybody survives or everybody dies. That's the gamble. So, yeah, the way that the Straw Hats took was, in fact, not the only method up there, but it was, in fact, the most riskiest in that situation there. Now, the problem I have with the knock-up stream, and Oda actually took this from a real-life thing called limnic eruptions, where you have a lake that has a very high concentration of CO2 built up in it, or there's different layers of the water in the lake. You know, maybe there's a certain different concentrations of CO2. This can result in a massive explosion, and it can wipe out a lot of life around the area. This is a real thing that happens. In fact, right now there's a lake called Lake Kivu in Africa. It borders the Congo and Rwanda, and I also think Wakanda's in there somewhere too. Anyway, this lake is huge, and it hasn't really built up enough CO2 for a limnic eruption to occur yet, but if it were to erupt, there's like 2 million people that live around this lake that would have, their lives would be decimated if this thing goes off. So I think Oda took the basic concept from that, but my problem is this. Alright, Cricket explains that there's these underground, these underwater caverns, you know, below the ocean bed, and they build up with this gas, and then when it gets to a point, the surface of these caverns, which is like the bottom of the ocean, cracks, and then the eruptions occur. So the only place on the Grand Line where these caverns exist or just happen to be right around Jaya? Okay, fine, I guess I could go with that, except these eruptions occur 5 times a month. So I am to believe that there's Jaya Island here. Let's just use my bed as an example. Alright, so Jaya Island is here, and then all around the island, there are like thousands, maybe tens of thousands of little tiny caverns that just build up with this, the CO2 or methane, something, build up with this gas, and then boom, knock-up stream, boom, knock-up stream, boom, knock-up stream. And this has been going on at a consistent rate for over 400 years. Because the knock-up stream occurred when it shot half a Jaya up into the sky, and that was 400 years ago. So I'm like, how many caverns are there? It's just like popping the zits under the ocean, and this is the only place in the Grand Line that this is ever stated to happen, right around Jaya. I'm just saying, you'd think that if it happens that frequently, 5 times a month, 60 times a year, you'd think after 400 years, all of the caverns, all of the zits would have been popped at that point, you know? But maybe they can fill back up. Maybe, like, when the roof of the one cave erupts, eventually it gets clogged back up again, and it gathers up gas again, and then explodes again, and takes maybe a few decades for that to occur. That was just something that bugged me. But anyway, that's the risky way to get up there. Now, the other way is a little bit unknown. It's stated by Gonfall to be a place called the Summit of High West. We know nothing about this place. No more information was given about it, but we can make a few assumptions. We can assume that it's a mountain. It's a very high mountain that stretches into the sky, and then that's how most people get to Sky Island. Now, the first place you're going to think of, actually, well, it's part of it, is either Reverse Mountain or the Red Line. Reverse Mountain is located on the Red Line. So that's like the tallest place in One Piece, you know, like going from ocean up. You know, that's where Marijois is, and that's located on top of the Red Line and everything. So I'm going to assume it's the Red Line. Now, it could be Reverse Mountain, except that if Reverse Mountain was this Summit of High West place, more people would be aware of the Sky Island, you know, more people would be aware of its existence. So I don't think it's Reverse Mountain. And this actually got me curious. Like, all right, let's break this down. Let's actually see maybe how high up this is. Because remember, when the Straw Hats were going up Reverse Mountain, they were going up pretty high. They were getting into the cloud layer, okay? They were getting into the, like sailing through a cloud. And by the time they got all the way to the summit, the water that was shooting off of the streams was just, you know, being, you know, I want to say, what's the scientific term for that? Icified freezing. Yeah, the water would immediately freeze as soon as it would, like, you know, spill out of the current. It would just freeze. So it's pretty high up. And so I did some research. I was trying to find out, like, how, like, what is the bare minimum of clouds appearing? Like, how high up do you have to get for, like, the clouds to actually start forming? And I found something called cirrus clouds, which form about 6,000 meters above sea level. And they're pretty thin clouds, and, you know, they are, like, mostly, like, ice, you know, vapor and stuff. So maybe that was something like that. If you want to say Reverse Mountain was maybe 5 to 6,000 meters above sea level, I think that's about appropriate, about halfway up to where the White Sea would be, and then the Straw Hats shot immediately back down. But that would mean that the summit of High West has to be some other place. Now, the red line might not be like just a wall that stretches all the way around the world. It's a continent. I would assume that there's some places that are higher up than others. So you have the red line, which stretches all the way, you know, let's say 5,000 meters above sea level. You might have certain places that have like you know, go up higher than that. So maybe that's what Gonfall was referring to. It might also just be a really tall mountain, maybe in the West Blue, because he said it was the summit of High West. Yeah, it's just weird, because there's some place in the world where you can just hop on and get to the sky, and it's he says that maybe one or two of you might manage to get through that method. Like, it wouldn't kill everybody, but it would kill a few of you. That's what he implied. But there appears to be somewhere in the world or in the Grand Line that you can, you know, have relatively easy access to the White Sea. And Gonfall stated, like, oh yeah, there's this main way to get up here, and you would have definitely passed an island or two. That makes me think that, like, at the summit of High West, there's like a welcoming island, like, welcome to the sky, ladies and gentlemen, pick up, here's your X-Toll to berry conversion machine. You know, something like that, maybe. We just don't know anything about Summit of High West, so let me know below what you think it might be or where it is. It's always, I'll be honest with you, it's always been something I've been curious about ever since watching, like, the original Funimation dub of it when I was a kid, when Gonfall mentioned it, like, Summit of High West. I'm like, that place sounds cool. I want to know more about that place. And the comedic scene afterwards when Nami was crying, like, you mean there was another safer way to get up here? But then you find out, like, yeah, there is, but there's also apparently something that would result in a few of you not making the journey. At least with the knock-up stream, you know, it's an all-or-nothing thing. Like, you all made it, then you're good. It's a risky gamble, but you made it, so everything's fine. So yeah, those are the main ways you get to the sky. Knock-up stream, Summit of High West, and then maybe some other method, and depends on what kind of devil fruits you have. Okay, so now getting to the sky itself. When you arrive at the White Sea, you're gonna find that it's kind of difficult to breathe, because, like I said, the oxygen is, the air is a little less dense. So this got me researching into the different layers of our atmosphere, okay, to see if it would actually be breathable 7,000 meters or 10,000 meters above sea level. And for humans, the short answer is no. You know, you're still technically in the troposphere at that point. The Earth's, think of the Earth's atmosphere as like a sandwich. Alright, so like on the bottom you have the troposphere, and then the stratosphere, and then the mesosphere, and then the thermosphere, and then the exosphere. And it's a little bit more complicated than that, because there's like little, like let's think of them as condiments in between the different layers. So in between the mesosphere and the thermosphere, there's the mesopause. Not to be confused with menopause, which is, once again, something else altogether. But yeah, so it's a little bit more complicated than that, but basically the troposphere, where we're living right now, that has most of the breathable, you know, air in it, so we can live and all that stuff. However, the higher up you get, the air is going to get less dense. That's like a common fact. So yeah, if you were just, like, like rocketed the way the Straw Hats were on that stream, like shing all the way up into the sky, 7,000 meters and then 10,000 meters up. The Straw Hats are kind of superhuman, and once again, it's fiction, but if that actually happened to you, you would most likely die. In fact, Matt Pat made a video about that a few years ago, I remember watching, where he was talking about Bioshock, Bioshock Infinite, and there's that scene where I think the main character gets, I never actually played the game, but the scene where he gets just propelled up into the sky in that elevator thing, and it's like, yeah, that would probably kill you. So yeah, that was basically the situation. But they're the Straw Hats, so it was kind of this also comedic scene where after like just a little bit in the sky, Sanji, Zoro, and Luffy were like, okay, yeah, no, we're good. I had a little bit of trouble catching my breath there for a bit, but we're fine now. Granted, it would have been kind of a difficult thing for Oda to write an epic action story, the Straw Hats squaring off against Eneru's priests if they could barely catch their breath. Like Zoro goes up against Ohm, and he's like, all right, Ohm, bring it. Oh, jeez. All right, 36 caliber. Oh, yeah, so it's probably best they got over that weakness sooner rather than later. So the first way to get in is you have to go through Heaven's Gate, which is located in the White Sea. And so you have to pay like an absurd X toll. I think it was like, a million or a billion X tolls per person. Now keep in mind, the exchange rate for X tolls to berries is like 10,000 X tolls equals 1 berry. So it's a very, big conversion rate, but still, that's kind of ridiculous. Even so, I mean, you can pass right through Heaven's Gate without paying because it's only guarded by a, 3-foot-nothing old lady named Amazon that has a camera dial, like a thing, the flash dial that captures the appearances of everybody that goes through. And then she reports back that, whoever had legal entry or who, passed through, legally. And then you have to deal with the White Berets once you get up there. But there's nothing physically preventing you from just sailing through, except for the lobster. Yeah, the lobsters are a primary mode of transportation in the sky. Once again, I think Oda was just having fun with it. He's just like, all right, whole new world, whole new rules. They use lobsters to get around. I'm like, all right, so the express lobster pops out of the sky and just latches onto your ship and puts it on his back and just shoots right up this milky road, a spiral thing that just propels you the 3,000 meters up further until you reach 10,000 meters and the White Sea. Now, when the Straw Hats arrived, they saw Angel Island before them, and this is the place where Konis and Pagoya live and everything, and they're under the rule of Eneru. And it's best that you don't diss the god, because he has observation hockey hooked up to freaking his Goro Goro no Mi powers, so he's like basically an antenna where he can hear everybody. So if you say anything about him, it's just lightning bolt, lightning bolt, lightning bolt, sleep spell. I mean, lightning bolt, so yeah. People there are just kind of living under a massive rule, and they're just kind of like 1984, where it's like they're pretty pissed off, but they can't really say it, because if they do, Big Brother will know. That's one thing I loved about 1984. Not the totalitarian government. No, that's not, like, Tekking, what are you into? No. One thing I loved about 1984 is that George Orwell thought ahead to actually include that 2-minute hate thing. Because the idea was people, if they just live in this society the rest of their lives, they're going to have these pent-up emotions. And the government in 1984 realized this. And they're like, okay, let's allow them like 2 minutes a day where they can just get all the hate out. Like I hate the government and all that stuff. They can just get it all out right there, and then the rest of the day they'll be chill. It's cool because it's like, yeah, it makes sense. You don't want people with those pent-up emotions walking around. But Eneru don't care about that. Eneru didn't read 1984, okay? Eneru will straight up deep fry your ass if you say anything negative about him, So yeah, that's the situation there. Now, Angel Island is connected to Upper Yard via this very large milky road. You can see it here. And then Upper Yard itself is actually the fragmented half of Jaya that was propelled up. So the size of the knock-up stream can actually vary depending on which, time of month and everything, and how big the cavern was below. The knock-up stream that shot up the Straw Hat ship was relatively small compared to the one 400 years ago, which was the size of an island. And so the knock-up stream stream struck right below Jaya and actually split the island in half and rocketed the top half of it all the way up to the sky. And so if you put the two different halves together, it actually makes a skull, with the golden city of Shandora being located in the skull's left eye. But now, as it currently stands, Jaya Island is just the mouth of the skull, and then Skypiea, or upper yard more specifically, is the upper half of said skull. So there you go there. Very few times on Geography is Everything I actually have a detailed map to show you. Alright, so on Angel Island itself, we don't really have that many locations or landmarks. Really the only place of note is Lovely Street, which I hear is rather lovely. And this is the place Conus was, like, trying to rally everybody together, and I think this was the place also where, like, the little harbor was, and where Eneru sent down his lightning bolt of, you know, judgment. So, yeah, that's, like, the only place on Angel Island that we know of. Now, when it comes to Upper Yard, a few more locations. We have, like I said, the Shandora City, which is the City of Gold. We also have Giant Jack, which is a huge beanstalk-like thing. And then above that, we also have, like, the domain of Eneru. Eneru has like, even higher up than the White Sea, technically. So maybe he's 11,000 meters above, because he's a god, man. You always got to live up higher than everybody else. And that's probably why his ultimate goal was, you know, the fairy verse, or the endless Verth, which is also the moon. So, yeah, he lived up a little bit higher than that, and he had his, like, little palace there where he chilled out with his harem, and he ate apples a lot, and that was pretty much it. But that was just like a piece of, like, just island or ocean, I mean sea cloud that was just kind of floating up above Upper Yard. It wasn't very large. It's just kind of big enough to accommodate him and then all of his immediate followers. So yeah, the rest of Upper Yard is just an overgrown jungle, because apparently once you get knocked up into the sky, I guess the trees and everything take and adapt to the environment as well as with the wildlife. So the trees from Jaya grew huge, and so it's this really cool area when it comes to, like, you know, battle and, you know, combat and everything between the Shandorians and God's warriors and the Straw Hats, because they're, like, jumping through these giant trees and everything. Really cool environment. And then you had the giant south birds that had evolved up there in the sky, so they had to just, you know, eventually adapt to the point where they could survive at that high altitude. So that was pretty cool that Oda took into account all that kind of stuff. Like, the island would not have looked the same as it did, you know, on sea level. So that was pretty cool there. Now, there are a few other places that we have here mentioned during Skypiea, like Bricka, which is the homeland of Eneru. I always pronounce it wrong. It's one of those... It's named after a Viking village. That's the namesake of Bricka. But I think it might be Bleika or something like that. It's you know, the pronunciation is hard for me. I just always took to calling it Bricka a while ago, so that's what I call it. But yeah, it's named after a Viking village. That was where Eneru and his priests and Yama and all of God's followers were from. Happens to be a lot of goat people living there, and then after Eneru decided to leave and take up the throne of God, he just nuked his homeland. Maybe because the people there were trying to rise up against him, or he just decided, I'm God, I can do whatever the hell I want, and boom. So yeah, Bricka is no longer around. There's also a place called the Land of Drifting Clouds, which, as you can probably think, isn't a very nice place. It's a land of clouds that drift, and that's all they do. They drift off into nothingness, and whatever gets put on them stays on them until it falls off. So that St. Brice, the galleon I mentioned earlier that fell from the sky, yeah, it was up there for about 200 years on a drifting cloud until eventually the cloud just dissipated and the galleon fell. Just completely rotted away with all of its, you know, inhabitants dead at that point, just turned into skeletons. And you know, this is the disturbing part. After the events of Skypiea, I actually had to go back, and thanks to you loyal listeners out there, you told me about this. I did not remember what happened to Eneru's priests. I know Gedatsu got, you know, flung to the Blue Sea. Shura was killed by Wiper's rejectile. But what happened to Ohm and Satori and all the, like, Yama and all the remaining members of God's crew? Because Eneru just went to the moon. And they all got put on drifting clouds. So, I want you to imagine this now. Satori and Ohm and Yama, they were put on a cloud and they're just drifting off into nothingness. There's no water, there's no food, there's no protection from the sun. You're just floating on a cloud, waiting to slowly starve to death. Or I guess you would die of dehydration long before that. But, yeah. Ohm and Satori and Yama, they're all dead right now. Unless they figured out a way off, they're not around anymore. Their bodies are slowly, like, they're mummies right now, basically, is what I'm after the 2-year time skip. They are, Ohm and Satori are mummies right now. That is horrifying. Now, they might have always figured out a way to get off, because they were pretty strong. Maybe they used their mantra to, like, use observation to figure out, like, oh, there's an island that way, or maybe it's like if we can maybe jump off the cloud and survive, you know, because Gedatsu, he fell down from the sky and he was fine. So maybe they did, and they're wandering the blue sea like Gedatsu right now. Who knows? I don't know. And remember Kaido, he jumps off sky islands all the time, and he's fine. So yeah, maybe that's what they did. But otherwise, I want you to have that lovely image in your head, you know, like, you know, okay. So, yeah, those are all the places in Skypiea itself. There are other sky islands, Wake Weatheria and Balloon Terminal. Balloon Terminal is actually an abandoned sky island, so nobody lives there anymore. But I'm sure there's a few others in the story that we've just never really been, you know, never been mentioned before. I hope the Straw Hats go to a new one at some point during the New World, because I think that would work, you know, at least one more time. Or, hey, there's another theory. Maybe Elbaf, because he has that Yggdrasil tree in the center of it. Maybe that goes all the way up to the sky. Maybe that's another way to get up there. Maybe High West is in the New World. Maybe we'll find out about it. Oda kind of does that kind of shit. He goes back and references things that were just casually thrown out years ago. We might still get to see High West. So, I'm excited. Anyway, thanks for watching, everybody. And, of course, I did this episode today on the 25th because this was the release of the new OVA episode of Sky Island. Have actually not got a chance to watch it yet. I'm going to see if it's updated on the sites that I use. I've actually heard from people on Reddit and, like, Twitter that it's really not all that, you know, mind-blowing, but still, it'd probably be nice just to see the updated animation and all that stuff. So, yeah, I'm going to be checking that out as soon as it's available to me. Thanks, everybody, to watching, and see you back here next time. And thank you to AMV Chopsticks once again for the awesome intro. It was pretty cool. And remember, everybody, geography is everything! Yeah! Bye.